I must admit, ever since I saw the specs of the Mi 11 Ultra, I have been positively drooling. So you know what I did? I actually procured a Chinese variant of the Mi 11 Ultra so that I can test the cameras and compare it against the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra. Unfortunately, I have the Mi 11 Ultra with me only for a few days, and therefore more deep dive content like full-fledged in-depth reviews should come soon, possibly around the time the phone launches in our country on April 23rd. Well, without wasting any more time, my name is Ershad, you're watching MySmartPrice, and let the battle of the Ultras begin. But before we move on, don't forget to hit that red subscribe button and the bell icon right next to it to get notified whenever MySmartPrice English puts out an awesome new tech video. So the Mi 11 Ultra has a fairly austere triple camera setup on the rear in a day and age when even mid-range phones come with quad camera setups. But that doesn't really matter because this phone has the largest camera sensor ever used on a smartphone, and the other sensors are of great quality too. The headliner is the new 50 megapixel Samsung GN2 sensor with a massive 1 by 1.12 inch sensor. To put things in context, it is about 15% larger than the 1 by 1.33 inch Samsung HM3 108 megapixel camera used by the S21 Ultra. Apart from that, you get a 48 megapixel ultra-wide shooter and a 48 megapixel 5x periscope zoom camera. The lack of a dedicated portrait camera might be a letdown if you like shooting a lot of portraits. You also get a 20 megapixel camera on the front, but the coolest thing about the camera setup is the added 1.1 inch AMOLED mini display on the rear that lets you take selfies using the 3 cameras on the rear in super high resolution. But you can use that display only in the photo mode, and it is not available for videos or portraits, which is a pity. Hopefully Xiaomi adds a fix with a software update soon. The other downside of this display is that the camera module is huge and it is the size of a mountain. You have to make your peace with it. Now, apart from the setup itself, there are a lot of cool things that you can do using the camera app. One of the fun things I noticed was the movie FX mode, and the parallel world effect I tried out looked super cool. Plus, you also get the same tilt shift mode we saw on the OnePlus 9 series. Now you can also shoot slow motion at 1920 FPS speed at 1080p resolution. Obviously, the slow motion videos on the Mi 11 Ultra are way better looking than the S21 Ultra's upsampled 960 FPS recording. Now, I'm barely scratching the surface when it comes to the camera features of the Mi 11 Ultra. There's a lot to unpack, and we'd be here all day long if I were to actually talk about every single feature out there. So let's just quickly move on to the comparison with the S21 Ultra. And here's where I need to make a clear disclaimer that this is the Indian variant of the phone with Exynos chip, so performance could slightly vary with the Snapdragon 888 variant. Hey, by the way, if you guys have come this far and you like this video, then don't forget to hit that like button and maybe even comment below so that the engagement algorithm starts working on YouTube and pushes it and recommends it to more people looking for Mi 11 Ultra videos. It could help them. Alright, so the Mi 11 Ultra starts with a bang. The 1 by 1.2 inch sensor immediately shows how a large sensor helps capture cleaner sensor details. In comparison, the S21 Ultra looks soft in certain areas. It is not like the S21 Ultra is not sharp, but the Mi 11 Ultra looks sharper with no software enhanced overprocessing. It will also help to note that the Mi 11 Ultra has a wider field of view. The 24mm lens on the camera is actually attached to a larger sensor, and therefore the crop factor is lower compared to the S21 Ultra's 24mm lens on a smaller sensor. Just a regular camera science. Now, the dynamic range performance of the Mi 11 Ultra is stupendous. I mean, the S21 Ultra is no slouch, but the Mi 11 Ultra does a fantastic job of controlling the highlights from clipping. Also, the Mi 11 Ultra does two kinds of HDR. One where it uses the basic multi-frame stacking shot at different exposures, which is an industry standard. The other is a smart ISO Pro option, which does the dynamic range correction at the sensor level itself. When the Mi 11 Ultra uses this smart ISO Pro option, it takes only a single picture, but each pixel has two different readouts with different conversion gains. Yep, it is complicated but useful in dynamic range situations that aren't too demanding. So yeah, the dynamic range performance on the Mi 11 Ultra is fantastic, possibly among the top 3 phones out there with the best dynamic range performance. Because there are times when the phone tends to crush the shadows in order to expose the highlights better. When it comes to colors, the Mi 11 Ultra tends to choose warmer, more pleasing colors. You will see that the buildings have a reddish tint as a result, and the reds are generally more poppy. The S21 Ultra in most cases looks more natural. Now, the Mi 11 Ultra does look attractive, but if you want closer to natural looking JPEGs straight from the camera, then the S21 Ultra will be the better bet. Now, the S21 Ultra takes the best selfies among all the phones available today, and the Mi 11 Ultra does nothing to change that. From the facial tones to the details to the accurate color of my shirt, the S21 Ultra selfie is way better than Mi 11 Ultras. I also shot one with the very harsh sun lighting me from the back, but both the phones did a good job with HDR, but of course the S21 Ultra selfie looks way better. However, let's just bring out the Mi 11 Ultra's trump card, the 1.1-inch display, which will help us frame self-portraits of even higher quality. Although I was slightly disappointed with how the main camera handled human shots. The color science was off compared to the S21 Ultra, which handled the exposure better with no exposure peaks, as is evident on the Mi 11 Ultra. It is here that I need to tell you that this is the Chinese variant of the phone, and it is quite possible that the tuning for facial tones could be different in India. Manufacturers generally tend to do that, so keep this caveat in the back of your mind. Now, for what it is worth, there is also a very evident yellow bias on the S21 Ultra shot. But if you're planning to shoot human subjects with the ultra wide angle camera, the Mi 11 Ultra doesn't sharpen as much as the S21 Ultra and generally looks better too. But yes, even the HDR human shots against the light are so much better on the S21 Ultra. The Mi 11 Ultra has this very evident tone mapped look. But fret not, because portrait shots of the Mi 11 Ultra are phenomenal, and for the most part you can't really tell the difference between the two phones. The Mi 11 Ultra has this nice warm look with the color of my shirt reproduced accurately as well. The S21 Ultra is great too, especially with the faux blur on the rear. The second portrait shows how the Mi 11 Ultra does a very clean gradual blur on the rear, which looks stunning. The facial tone is accurate on the S21 Ultra here, and the Mi 11 Ultra has a very slight red bias, but it doesn't look too bad. But the S21 Ultra definitely has the advantage of using the 3x telephoto camera for a more natural looking portrait with the correct face size as well. The Mi 11 Ultra does zoom in 2x by default, which the S21 Ultra does as well, but both look very average because these are digital zoom crops. Now, talking about portraits, let's talk about the selfie portraits as well. There is no doubt that the S21 Ultra is better with a cleaner edge detection, better background blur and superb facial tones. It is not like the Mi 11 Ultra is bad or anything, but it looks pretty artificial here with boosted colors on my shirt and the red bias in my facial tone. Moving on to the ultra-wide shots, the high dynamic range processing is better on the Mi 11 Ultra with no artificial color tweaking, which is visible on the S21 Ultra. In the second sample, the Mi 11 Ultra and the S21 Ultra offer great color science parity between the primary and the ultra-wide cameras. But yes, the Mi 11 Ultra does make a more warmer image with boosted greens and yellows. Anyway, the Mi 11 Ultra's ultra-wide sample offers natural details along the center, but you'll see softer textures along the corners. The distortion correction is fine though. Also, this 128-degree field of view is the widest on a smartphone yet. The S21 Ultra's ultra-wide angle camera has a tendency to over-sharpen, but the corner sharpness looks better as a result. Between the Mi 11 Ultra and the S21 Ultra, I generally prefer the former's ultra-wide pictures. While round ultra-wide was captured by Mi 11 Ultra, the S21 Ultra is definitely better at zoom capabilities. Couple of points before I start comparing the pictures. One, the color science consistency between the primary and telephoto is great on both the phones. Therefore, the S21 Ultra offers more natural looking colors. Remember how I had mentioned that the primary camera of the S21 Ultra has more natural looking colors. The Mi 11 Ultra, on the other hand, is warmer again, which is evident from the orangish shade of the building. Starting with the 3x telephoto shot, which is sharper on the S21 Ultra because it has a dedicated telephoto camera. At 5x, the Mi 11 Ultra offers crisper details. Any further and the S21 Ultra offers a sharper image, whether it is 10x or 30x or a whopping 100x. I really don't give a crap about this mad zoom levels on these phones. It is a digital zoom at the end of the day, and you mostly end up with a very average looking picture. The thing with these new massive sensors attached to wide lenses is the extremely shallow depth of field that you get at a close crop. I really like how Samsung managed to introduce the focus enhancer mode, which essentially switches to the ultra wide angle camera to shoot the picture. As you can see, you get the entire subject in focus as opposed to a part of the subject being out of focus in both the shots. Honestly, the better solution for this would be a variable aperture solution. Hopefully manufacturers can find a solution to this problem soon. As for the macro shots, the Mi 11 Ultra cannot hold a candle to what the S21 Ultra can do. I mean, just look at how close the S21 Ultra can get to the subject. I find it odd that Xiaomi couldn't get the macro shot right on the Mi 11 Ultra. This is the same company that makes some of the best macro cameras on its Redmi Note 10 Pro series, which is why it's surprising. If you, like me, shoot a lot of shots indoors lit by a tube light, then you'll notice in my testing samples that the Mi 11 Ultra looks underexposed. But twist and tail, it actually isn't. In fact, it captures the right exposure, and the S21 Ultra has actually shot it up slightly to make the whole scene look slightly more attractive. Also, look at the gorgeous control over the tube light flare on the Mi 11 Ultra. I also want to point your eyes to two specific points of interest. Look at the table. You will see that the Mi 11 Ultra has captured the most natural looking sharp details that look really appealing. You can read the name of the book Sprint and decipher the dates on the calendar easily. The S21 Ultra is not bad here, but the Mi 11 Ultra definitely outshines it with its larger sensor. Now move your gaze to the white pot holding the large plant. You can clearly see that the Mi 11 Ultra's noise control is phenomenal. Here's the fun fact. The Mi 11 Ultra actually uses a higher ISO of 449 compared to the S21 Ultra's 250. Now, coming to the fun part of the comparison, the low light test. Here we are going to take a look at the non-night mode samples first. This will help us identify which one of these sensors capture more light. What happens in night mode shots generally is that the software intrudes and adds a lot of post-processing. So as you can tell, the Mi 11 Ultra sensor offers slightly better light sensitivity, but what matters more is the sharpness on offer and the better noise control. For example, take a look at the top floor balcony on the building on the right. You will see a far cleaner image on the Mi 11 Ultra compared to the S21 Ultra's noisier sample. Moreover, the Mi 11 Ultra is super sharp too. In fact, even the definition of the buildings on the rear is better on the Mi 11 Ultra shot. In our second sample, we actually have a night mode shot. The Mi 11 Ultra has the correct exposure here, and you can also spot the speaker in the TV cabinet, which is not visible on the S21 Ultra. And the details on the leaves of the fiddle flick plant and the dining table on the rear are sharper on the Mi 11 Ultra compared to the S21 Ultra. In the final couple of samples, the first one is without night mode on and the scene was actually that dark. This was the darkest setting I tested. Evidently, the Mi 11 Ultra's sample is not only brighter but also sharper. The final low light sample is a night mode shot of the same scene only from a different angle. And this is the only testing sample where the Mi 11 Ultra botched the color temperature for the first time. Plus, I didn't notice any immediate advantages in sharpness either. Anyway, the Mi 11 Ultra's low light performance is just fantastic. The bigger sensor is clearly coming in handy here. You can also shoot night mode shots using the ultra wide angle camera on both the phones. At very first glance, most folks will prefer the S21 Ultra's capture because it is brighter. But there are a couple of things to note here. The Mi 11 Ultra's rendition of the black sky is more soothing. In comparison, the S21 Ultra sky has a grey gradient. This is also because the Mi 11 Ultra's night mode tends to create a natural looking scene with good contrast, where the darker scenes are rendered dark and not artificially brightened. The other advantage of that approach is you can see the sharper textures and clearly defined outlines. I like the Mi 11 Ultra's low light ultra wide shot, but I can see why someone would prefer the S21 Ultra's brighter rendition of the scene. Moving to low light telephoto comparison, the S21 Ultra has a sharper image at 3x optical zoom compared to the digital zoom on the Mi 11 Ultra. At 5x optical zoom, the Mi 11 Ultra's night mode doesn't look as bright as the S21 Ultra's despite offering more natural details. The phones top out at 10x with night mode on, and the Mi 11 Ultra offers more natural sharpness once again compared to the S21 Ultra, which looks brighter. It is a toss-up between natural looking telephoto zoom sample or a brighter one, so basically a toss-up between Mi 11 Ultra and S21 Ultra basis your preferences. Modern flagships can shoot portrait shots in the night as well, and in this portrait of me you can clearly see that the S21 Ultra does a fantastic job with the details, semantic segmentation and the quality of bokeh. In fact, even the Mi 11 Ultra is nice, but the S21 Ultra looks better. Although like I mentioned earlier, the Mi 11 Ultra and the S21 Ultra shoot portrait shots at 2x zoom, which is digital, and both the images look pretty soft. But you can now use the 3x telephoto camera on the S21 Ultra to shoot portraits, and undoubtedly it looks crisper and better too. I'd easily choose the S21 Ultra over the Mi 11 Ultra for low light portraits. In low light video recording, the Mi 11 Ultra's bigger sensor lets in more light by default, and you get a brighter, well exposed video recording compared to the S21 Ultra in 4K 60fps mode. The S21 Ultra's footage is just too noisy. Plus you have a special night mode video recording that makes the scene even brighter. It is clear that the Mi 11 Ultra's cleaner, low noise video recording option is the best here. It is just stupendously good. But yes, the phone does tend to drop frames if it gets hot. Unlike the OnePlus 9 Pro where it throws up a warning, or the S21 Ultra where it throttles, the Mi 11 Ultra actually keeps going. These are two phones that are also capable of shooting 8K 20fps video recording natively out of the box. The Mi 11 Ultra does shoot at a much higher 130 Mbps bitrate compared to the 80 odd on the S21 Ultra. Plus you have the option to shoot with HDR10 support as well, which is nuts. Oh wait, the Mi 11 Ultra can also shoot 8K 24fps videos using all the three cameras. So if you fancy shooting 8K videos with the ultra wide and the telephoto, the Mi 11 Ultra is the way to go. In fact, the Mi 11 Ultra is the way to go if you want to shoot 8K videos, period. You can also shoot HDR10 Plus videos on both the phones. However, Samsung's HDR10 Plus jobs are better. You get a nice and flat profile giving you room to edit freely in post, plus you get a higher bitrate recording as well. Xiaomi has botched it up with heavy processing, which just blows out the colors and makes it look bad. No point adding a feature if it's not done right, in my opinion. Now coming to 4K 60fps recording for the main camera, you do not get the regular HDR support on the Mi 11 Ultra, which means the dynamic range performance is automatically better on the S21 Ultra as a result. But when it comes to details, stabilization and colors, the Mi 11 Ultra is on par with the S21 Ultra, if not better. Plus the sound recording on the Mi 11 Ultra is crisper and fuller too. Now it's shooting at 4K 60fps on both the phones. Do let me know what you thought of the sound quality, the image stabilization, and of course the video recording ability as well, which seems to be really good on the Mi 11 Ultra as well. Both the phones are doing a fairly good job. Both the phones also offer a dedicated super steady mode for video recording, in which the S21 Ultra can go up to 1080p 60 fps while the Mi 11 Ultra tops out at 1080p 30 fps. But the Mi 11 Ultra offers a wider field of view, the stabilization is better with no shakes, and the picture quality is more detailed too. I mean, Xiaomi really seems to have figured out this video game very well. If you like shooting videos with the ultra wide angle camera, then the S21 Ultra could entice you with its HDR chops. But let it be known that the Mi 11 Ultra isn't bad looking here, but just that you get better dynamic range on the S21 Ultra. Otherwise, the Mi 11 Ultra offers equally good footage with poppier colors and better quality sound recording as well. So overall, between the S21 Ultra and the Mi 11 Ultra, I'd pick the Mi 11 Ultra as my go-to video shooter because even low-light samples are better looking. Now the Mi 11 Ultra tops out at 1080p 60 fps video recording using the front camera, and it is actually a pity that you can't use the mini display to shoot using the rear camera directly. The Samsung maxes out at 4K 60 fps and offers HDR support as well, clearly giving it the advantage in terms of details and dynamic range. But colors and stabilization are almost on par on the two phones. The sound recording is surprisingly crisper on the Mi 11 Ultra. So front camera video recording is definitely an advantage on the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra. After this, I will also show you the HDR recording matched on both at 1080p 30 fps. But right now, and if you switch to the 1080p 30 fps mode where the Mi 11 Ultra has HDR support, you can see that the dynamic range and detail advantage for the S21 Ultra vanishes, but the facial tones are more accurate on the S21 Ultra. Anyway, if you're going to shoot 1080p 30 fps videos using the front camera, the Mi 11 Ultra's better sound recording alone should make you want to pick it, considering most of the other parameters are almost similar. Now, after using the Mi 11 Ultra's cameras, I'm fairly convinced that Xiaomi's engineers went full beast mode when choosing the camera hardware for this phone. The primary camera takes the sharpest, most natural looking pictures that I've ever shot on a smartphone, and the noise control algorithm is the best on a smartphone yet. I'm certain that most smartphone cameras have already replaced compact cameras, but they're really close to even replacing cameras with 1-inch sensors. Sorry RX100 users. Furthermore, I think that the zoom capabilities of the Mi 11 Ultra are great, but yes, I think that the S21 Ultra definitely trumps it. But when it comes to ultra wide angle camera performance, then the Mi 11 Ultra sort of has an edge over the S21 Ultra. But when you're looking at low light shots, again, the Mi 11 Ultra is just phenomenal and bests the S21 Ultra. And video performance with all the video recording options that you get definitely gives the Mi 11 Ultra an edge once again. Plus the low light video recording is just phenomenal. I think clearly we can classify the Mi 11 Ultra as a photographer's phone, but would I classify this as the best camera on a smartphone yet? Well, actually, yes and no. Yes, if you look at your use case and scenario. For example, I love capturing pictures with a lot of sharp details, and in that scenario, the Mi 11 Ultra is actually at the top of the pile and therefore would be my pick for the best camera smartphone. Having said that, if you're shooting a lot of human subjects, then I would still pick something like the S21 Ultra or the iPhone 12 Pro Max because they are far more reliable with respect to even selfies and portrait mode and all of those things, which are not bad on the Mi 11 Ultra, but they definitely need some work. Maybe that's an issue with my Chinese variant of the phone, and hopefully the Indian variant can fix face tones and stuff like that when they launch it in India, because generally brands tend to do that. So yeah, that was my deep dive camera review and camera test of the Mi 11 Ultra against the S21 Ultra. Do let me know in the comment section below what you thought about it. Until next time, this is Aishar from MySmartPrice, signing off. Goodbye and Godspeed, my friends.